This video is going to demonstrate how to add a pattern wall treatment in a perspective drawing. You might be familiar with the edit and fill tools when you are adding a pattern with an elevation, and the type of method tends to work well for an elevation because the drawing itself is basically drawn orthographically. However, when working with perspective, we have angles and corners to work with, and in essence, the pattern we choose needs to fit around those angles and corners in order to create a sense of realism that can be perceived from a particular vantage point. So the first thing you're going to do is to place your drawing in Photoshop, and this can be anything from a hand sketch drawing or a computer-generated one like this one. This was created using SketchUp. And you can have yours colored in if you like, but I just like to keep mine without the colors so that the finishes that are added later resemble the materials that were specified for the project. So you will notice how the drawing itself is on its own layer, and it isn't on the background layer. And the reason for this is because when we add in materials like the flooring, we want to ensure that the material can easily be placed behind the drawing layer, and the only way to do that is to have the drawing on its own layer. If the drawing is on the background layer, then it becomes difficult to really add anything behind that layer, and if we need to skew or proportion the flooring material, we would evidently be altering or affecting the drawing. So in another tutorial I will show you how to add in the flooring, and you can pretty much follow the steps seen here to do this as well. So the rendering here is basically used as a guide, and what you are basically going to do is use the lines in the drawing to skew the pattern into place. So in order to do that, let's find a pattern, and I normally create mine in PowerPoint, or I just add my patterns into PowerPoint, and pretty much I'm going to cut out a few steps by just selecting it, right-clicking, click on copy, then go back into Photoshop and click paste. And as you can see, our pattern is here. And it has its own layer. So you can upload the material any way you wish, but I find that this is much faster and it works pretty much in the same way. So now with our material positioned here, you can see it creates a separate layer again. And this can be edited or renamed, and you can rename it if you like, but I'm going to hold off on that for now because we are going to create a series of duplicates for this pattern because we want to be able to retain the pattern size without distorting the pattern. So for example, if I was only to use this one layer here and try to cover this whole wall with it, the pattern would begin to look distorted and somewhat warped and stretched. So duplicate patterns are required, and to do this all we need to do is right click on the layer, select duplicate layer, click on OK, and select my arrow here, and as you can see we're creating another layer. And you're going to do this a couple of times, and what you might as well start doing is just pattern matching it similar to the way we would if this was a real wallpaper. Okay, and then we're going to click again, duplicate layer. Again, if you prefer to overlap it, I think that works much better, and giving that seamless type of look. And let's try it one more time. And you're basically going to create this so it covers basically most of the wall, you know. And let's just do one more duplicate layer. Okay. this one. Overlap this one again. So now one of the things you might notice is that the pattern might seem a bit large in scale for the wall it is planned for. And this is fine when the pattern appears on your presentation board. However, in a drawing like this, the pattern would ultimately appear smaller in scale. And this is because the people in the drawing would be viewing the pattern the same way we would at full scale. So this pattern would eventually need to be scaled down to reflect the actual size within the rendering. And I'll get to that in a minute. So once we have our patterns created horizontally, we need to continue the pattern vertically. And there's two ways to do this. We can continue creating separate layers like we have been doing here, or we can group what we have here and merge the layers so that it creates one layer and copies the pattern down. So now with each duplication, you will see that each layer has been created. And to group them, what we need to do is add a folder at the bottom. And now if you want to give it a name, you can, Wallpaper. And then you're going to place all of these layers into that folder. 3, 4, and 5. And then if you minimize the folder, we just have our drawing and the wallpaper. And it's pretty much concise. But if we open it, we can still see that they're still separate. So to group this, we're just going to click on right click, and we're going to scroll down to merge group. And now it's one layer that can be copied and brought down. And let's now let's bring the pattern down. So now it's going to say duplicate layer. Click on OK. And then we're just going to bring the pattern down. And again, we're going to try and pattern match it. And might be better to overlap it like we did before. And we'll do one more. Let's create one more. Duplicate layer. Click on OK. And again, I'll bring it back down. Overlap it. So basically, we have this wall here now. So it's kind of like matching the edges with a real wallpaper. And once we have everything positioned, we are now going to take all these layers that we created again. As you see, they're separate layers. And we're going to merge them again. So again, we're going to click on folder. We can call it wallpaper again. So that really matter what you call it. Stick it, put all of these into the folder. Again, they're all one piece. That one I don't think is in. Yeah, it's in. It's not. No, right there. It's one piece. And then we're going to right-click and scroll down to Merge Group. And again, this becomes one full layer that can now be edited and scaled into place. So we're going to move it closer to our wall. And while the pattern is still straight, it might be a good idea to duplicate it again, because if you have other walls that you want to cover with the same pattern, let's say maybe you might want to cover this wall in a pattern, a similar pattern, you can. And it's best to have the layer straight before we start changing the shape of this. So I'm not going to do this wall, I'm just going to show you how we do this one. And now we can pretty much scale the pattern down to a size that is relative to the scale of the drawing. So we're going to take scale, and I'm just going to scale it down. And this might look okay. Okay, apply. Now, we don't really want to stretch it over all of this, so we can pretty much do the same steps again, which would basically be to duplicate the layers again. Now we're duplicating this whole wall, so all those little boxes we created are basically being formatted again. Okay, and then let's do this vertically as well. Duplicate layer. So it's a lot of layer matching and overlaying, but you pretty much get the idea here. Okay, and then we'll do one more for that wall, or that section. Okay, and then pull it across. And pretty much just going to match the pattern. And then now that we have 4 separate layers, we want this to be one piece. So again, we're going to create another folder, put them in. That one didn't go in. Let's put that one in. This one in. Okay, and then again, right-click, merge group. Now it's all one group. Now this is ready to scale and skew into place. And one of the tricks I'm going to show you now is if you go up here and you click on your opacity, you can bring this down so that you can still see the pattern, but also see the lines within the drawing. So I'm going to start with the shorter side first. I'm going to bring the corner all the way up to the edge of the line. I'm going to click on Edit, Transform, and Skew. And I'm going to just pull this corner down to where it would probably meet the floor. I'm going to do the other side. And now we also need to cover this section of the wall, so I'm going to see if I can pull it out this way. And then we might we'll see if we can just scale it across. So a couple of layers needed to be created there. But I'm gonna try and just scale it across and see if it'll affect anything. And actually the pattern is holding pretty well. So, you know, that's the main thing. So we're basically skewing it so that the pattern appears within the lines, and the pattern scale is maintained without stretching it over this whole wall with just that one layer we created originally. So now with our pattern is set and it's pretty much on the wall, we can see how it is covering some of the elements that are in front of it. And in order to delete what's this part, we're going to go to our drawing layer. We're going to select it. Oh, I first have to click on Apply. Okay, and now we're going to select our layer, our drawing layer, and this is our drawing layer. This is where our drawing is. And I'm going to select the magic wand tool, and I'm going to select the 2 walls we want to show. Then I'm going to go up and I'm going to select inverse. And what that does is it just reverses what was selected in the box so that only the outer edges can be erased. If I didn't select inverse, then it will only erase the areas that are within the box I have chosen. And that is what you would do when it comes down to laying the floor. But for the wall pattern, we want to erase what is on the outer edges of what is selected. So now you're going to reselect the wallpaper layer again, and you're going to select your erase tool. I'm going to zoom out a bit because I think the erase tool works much better when the drawing is smaller. Okay, and select erase, and just start erasing the wallpaper. And basically, you can see I'm going over the protected areas, and it's not doing anything to the paper. It's just really erasing everything that's on the outside. And pretty much once you have this all cleaned up, you can go back to the opacity and turn that up so you can view how the drawing will look, or how the pattern will look. Let's do that to scale. And as you can see, there's a couple of strays here, so we'll just take our eraser tool again, clean that out. And there you have it. You have your wallpaper pattern in perspective against that angled wall. I hope this helps.